the chair of the Nevada County Campus Council at Sierra College Foundation, hosts of today's event and the other community forums. With respect, we acknowledge the Nevada County campus of Sierra College as the traditional and unceded homelands of the Nisenan peoples. For countless generations, the Nisenan have carried out their responsibilities as stewards of this place originally known as DASPA. Sierra College commits to an ongoing relationship with the Nevada City Rancheria Nisenan tribe and their future generations who are an integral part of the Sierra College community. Before I tell you a little bit about the foundation, I have this list. If you have not signed up to get email notices of the forums, please sign the list and send that around. If you already get them, please do not add your name again. How many people have never been on the campus? Then I invite you when we're done to please come up and see what an incredible campus this is, very student focused, and our council is dedicated to supporting the programs and students of the Nevada County campus. A couple of things that are coming up here at the college I'd love for you to know about is the Sierra Writers Conference on March 8th, and Amy Tan, among other authors, will be here. And in addition, the Council and Seroptimus International of Grass Valley are partnering for an anti-human trafficking symposium on April 4th from 1 to 4, and there's information on the table. We're going to have members of law enforcement, the district attorney's office, detectives who've worked with human trafficking, and survivors of human trafficking. So it should be a great symposium. Thank you for being here, and I'm going to turn it over to Lorraine, and I think you guys are.
We're talking about the Los Angeles fires last month. 29 people, destroyed 18,000 homes, forced more than 200,000 evacuations, burned 57,000 acres, and left behind 4.5 million tons of debris. And dozens of our local firefighters went and joined the international effort to fight those fires, and we have 8 of the locals with us here today, and I'll introduce them on the way down, and then we're going to talk to them about what their role was when they were down there, what they saw, what they did, and what lessons they can bring home to help make us all safer. So to my left, this is Dwayne Strausser. He is the recently appointed Grass Valley City Risk Reduction Manager. He was there in Los Angeles as a heavy equipment operator, and boy, what he's seen. Jared McElhannon, correct. He's a captain with the Nevada County Consolidated Fire District. Robert Tellum, he's a fire prevention officer with Consolidated. James Drummond, fresh from vacation, happy to be with us today. He's been so helpful even while he's been over in Bodega Bay. Thank you so much for everything. Dennis Hack is from the Sheriff's Department. He was the law enforcement liaison with CAL FIRE Incident Management Team. He is a sergeant. My friend Landon Hack, Assistant Chief of the CAL FIRE Nevada Yuba Placer Unit. He was the Palisades Fire Operations Section Chief. Jim Hudson, Deputy Chief of CAL FIRE Nevada Yuba Placer Unit. He was the Palisades Fire Incident Commander. And then at the end there, Tyler Tomlinson, he is a Grass Valley City firefighter, and he served as the Public Information Officer on the Palisades Fire. So first I want to start with Dwayne, if you want to grab the microphone, sir. You know, one of your tasks as a heavy equipment officer, I think it's, yes, it's on. You were tasked with moving everything out of the way to make room for the first responders, and that included vehicles as well as other obstacles. Did you encounter vehicles with victims inside?
So what we can say is there are reports of fatalities that were on site within the fire event borders, in which individuals that were located by law enforcement and public safety down there were within a very close proximity of areas they could have gone to avoid the outcome. Meaning that you've got a beach area in many cases down there where you've got sand and maybe a 100-yard stretch going down to the ocean's edge, and yet there are people involved in fatalities that put themselves at risk because of most likely belongings, trying to get things out of their home, waiting too long, not heeding a timely evacuation order. So I guess my point is, when you bring those lessons home, you've got to realize that when panic sets in, human nature is weird, and we do some very strange things. We don't think straight, and it's easy to avoid, in most cases, a tragic outcome like that, where somebody is trapped in a vehicle, which we've seen at other fires in the past, whether it was going up to Paradise, Campfire, Greenville, any of those areas. I think if you heed the warnings from our trained public safety officers, our OES departments, and you get out early, great. And if not, I think we're learning a hard lesson that it may be better sometimes to shelter in place in the open, to go find an open area and not get in your car and try to panic and get out. So let's put it that way.
How does one make that decision?
Education, public education. So again, I'm not a firefighter. I'm not a trained firefighter. I'm not a police officer, public safety officer. I'm an equipment operator, and I do that part-time. So I'm not even trained or equipped with some of the things that you see. We're not trained for live power lines. You have power poles coming down across the streets. I'm not trained how to deal with that. I'm trained to cut fire break and fire line. That's what I do. You cut soil. And typically, I'm not in harm's way to the point that our firefighters and police officers are. I'm ahead of the fire event somewhere, trying to proactively, they call it lining out. They give us a line in best case scenarios, and you are told where to go, and you're cutting a line to try to keep that fire from spreading to another community, another area. So you're not, in most cases, in harm's way, such as our firefighters are. So you have time to breathe, and sometimes we are following a fire line. We're within maybe 100 yards, and that's your guidance. You know where to go. You're trying to keep it from spreading beyond you. But boy, the situation like Pacific Palisades, Altadena, those are cases. It's hard to judge anybody, whether it's a citizen panicking, whether it's the limitations of our public safety personnel, what they can and can't do within the parameters of what the situation they're stuck in.
So takeaway message from you is evacuate early.
Educate. And again, I think, and not rely on age-old models that we have been following since the 50s and 60s. We've got to relearn and rethink everything that we are doing now as far as public education, and as far as fire treatment methods, as far as our construction methods, which is now going to be my new position. What do we do with building materials, design of those buildings, and again, I come from a city council mayor background in Nevada City, where in many cases somebody comes forward to us, they give us plans for a new construction project, and what do we do as a city or a county or municipality? We force them to put in landscaping, right, for beautification. So we're telling folks, okay, you're going to build this building, well, you also have to put in this vegetation, these beautiful shrubs, these flowers. And there are at least 2 construction projects, new construction, I can tell you right now, that is going to fall on my desk now with the new position in Grass Valley, in which the landscaping that was just installed is most likely going to have to come out because it's not going to meet the new 0 to 5, or 20, 30, 100-foot barriers that are kind of being put in place quickly by the state. And then we've got to decide as a community, do we go along with that? Do we want to soften it up a little bit, or are we going to be even more stringent than what the state or maybe even the federal agency tells us, or what the insurance companies are telling us, separate from our local ordinances and codes? Again, the code may not be as stringent as what the insurance company threatens you with, that if you don't do it this way, they're going to, basically quadruple your insurance or take it away. So we've got a lot to learn and to rethink and to re-educate.
Sounds like a moving target, and I appreciate your background, both on the political side, and I can just see you behind a bulldozer, my golly, down there. Jared McElhannon, you're the captain with Nevada County Consolidated Fire. You were the engine captain on the Eaton fire. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Your primary job was to save lives, but your other assignments include property preservation and securing utilities. And how important were those missions?
So, yes, thank you. So our mission I was an engine captain, so I was responsible for myself and a fire engine. My crew consisted of myself plus 2 other people. I worked directly with 4 other engines assigned to my counterpart here, Robert Tellum. He would be in charge of us. He'll speak in a second. Our mission was life safety and property and environment. And so when we arrived, it was, the winds have subsided quite a bit, but it was still in the 30 to 40 mile an hour sustained winds. We entered in the community of Altadena, and we encountered a lot of vehicle traffic from, I don't know if they were evacuees or public interested in seeing what was going on. It's hard to say. We were inundated with vehicle traffic, but also power lines were down, power poles were down, streets were inaccessible due to trees. There's a lot of smoke. There was a lot of heat and embers, and it's a new area for us. We're coming from Nevada County. I have never been to Altadena. So managing those streets and adjusting to the environment of trying to mitigate what was happening, because it's still growing and still moving around. So we were looking for opportunities of success. So if someone needed help, we'd help them. My engine crew did not run into anybody that was in that need, but we always had that in as our priority 1. Our second was property preservation. Some houses made it, and they were surrounded by houses that didn't make it, 15, 20 houses in either direction, and a house was standing. So our mission there was to get out on foot and circle this house and look for details as far as little embers that could eventually grow and work its way into the structure, and now we have a fully involved structure fire. And so I think there's some 3,000 houses, I think, in the Eaton fire that were destroyed. There were several that made it, but it took a lot of effort to search every house. Meanwhile, a house would catch on fire and crews would kind of swarm to that to hopefully save it. Water was an issue, but when you burn 3,000 houses, and every one of those houses has a 1-inch water line going to that house to service normal usage, and now it's uncontrolled, the water system's not able to compete with that kind of demand. So the hydro system goes down. If one house burns, it's acceptable because the system's designed for that. But when you have 3,000 houses that have water lines, and that are not controlled anymore, the blood pressure drops. There's no water available. So the system's not designed for 3,000 houses to burn down at once. So that was a challenge. We made do. We went further into the city that was not involved, grabbed water, and came back to the main fire area. Encountering with property preservation, and we did find some chickens, took care of those guys. It's amazing, there's all parts of life that is still trying to hang on. As he mentioned about evacuations, it's important to realize what's important. Houses can be rebuilt, personal items are tough to bring back, but people are tough to bring back. So prepare. Back your vehicle in. Have half a tank of gas at a minimum. No more than one way out of town. Maybe it's Truckee. Maybe it's North San Juan. Maybe it's to Auburn. Maybe it's to Marysville. maybe it's to Colfax. Remember, everyone else is doing the same thing you are. But having that half a tank of gas might get you to Auburn, where the demand for a fuel station is normal. Where here in town, you could be backed up maybe for hours trying to get that gas to get further away. Have that go bag. Take the time during the winter, during the summer to clear vegetation in hopes that that mitigation can help us hang out around your house or your structure. When Altadena and the Palisades took off, those winds were in the 80 to 100 mile an hour sustained winds. It's extremely difficult to do anything at those wind speeds. The ember wash through the community was it was incredible. It's like standing on your car doing 80 miles an hour down the road trying to avoid raindrops. And those raindrops are now embers, and that's what you're dealing with. It's very difficult and challenging. We're fortunate around here that we do have a lot of cooperators with aircraft, the state fire department, local government, the Forest Service. But if we had 80 mile an hour sustained winds in this community, I would not be surprised if we had safe results as Altadena and Palisades. It happened up in Paradise. And that wasn't too long ago either.
Is there anything you saw that you cannot?
You know, I was watching a movie the other day, and I'm pretty sure it was filmed in Altadena type community footprint. And those houses, you know, are no longer there. That history, that's an old community. It's going to take a long time to become old again. So.
Thank you, Captain. All right, next up, Robert Tellum, Fire Prevention Officer with Consolidated. You were the fire strike team leader, trainee, as it were, on the Eaton fire. You arrived in Los Angeles the day after the fire started. You were sent immediately to the fire line, and you told me you jumped from house fire to house fire. Talk to us about that. Talk to us about using available resources and lessons to be shared.
Right, thank you. I was with Jared's crew, and as a strike team leader, strike teams are set up in a specific way to deal with super stressful situations, right? A lot of it's lessons that we learned from the military and stuff like that, span of control. So our engines consist of 5 engines with up to usually 4 personnel or 3 personnel on each engine, with an engine captain that's responsible for that engine, and then the strike team leader is usually in charge of those 5 engines. So those 5 captains report to that strike team leader, right, to receive assignments and information. Yes, I was down there. We left here about 3 o'clock in the morning. We got called up pretty quickly, responded down, and arrived that next morning and got sent immediately to the line after our 12-plus hour drive. And then immediately started fighting fire. Like Captain McElhannon had mentioned, the winds had died down pretty substantially, but we did still have a lot of wind and there was a lot of fire. A lot of houses were burning, so we were jumping from house to house. I mentioned the resources that were available, and you had a question about that, is when any fire starts like that, any major fires start like that, and the big red button's pushed by, CAL FIRE starts building the Army, right? And we start responding in there. Any community is going to be taxed for quite some time, especially when you had multiple fires that started down there, Palisades and the Eden fire, the other fires that started. It starts eating up resources very, very quickly. So we're kind of strapped because people are traveling from all over the state, and in this case, all over the country to come fight the fire. So until we get those resources, a lot of times those first few hours are pretty critical, and we're very, very busy because there's more work to go around. So one of the main things that I learned about that is that it's critical to have all your support for your local fire agencies. And the reason I say that is because with the master mutual aid system that we have in this state, which works amazing, it wouldn't be possible for us to send somebody unless we had the available staff here to make sure that you all are protected, right? So that's our primary mission is our county. That's who we serve. And then when we have extra people, we're available to send them out, but only once we make sure that our mission here at home and that you guys are protected with all of your station staffed and fire engines that are going to be responding should you guys have a bad day. So yeah, we got there, we jumped from house to house, and like Captain McElhannon was saying, that many of the houses made it, and I want to say that there's a lot of houses that did make it because of these guys. We got there and there was houses burning. Sometimes you had to make a decision with the resources that were available. Do we have enough water to put this fire out, right? Sometimes you get a house that's, it's got a couple rooms on fire. Typically that would be no big deal. We'd go in and we'd knock it down, and we'd be pulling the stuff that we were able to save out for the family to collect to go to their hotel room. But when there's 3,000 houses burning down, we got to make decisions. Do we put the water on this? Can we catch this and put it out, or do we limit our water and protect the houses that are around it and keep those ones standing instead of losing all of them? So those kind of decisions have to be made. They mentioned the 0 to 5 feet. That was one of the lessons that I really learned down there on these fires. Most of the houses that were down there that were burning were stucco construction with tile roofs. So what we found when we were protecting these houses is that many times, privacy is important to us, and landscaping and beautiful places to go home and recreate are important to us. But what we were finding is that, dog-eared fences were pretty popular down there, for your backyard and whatnot. So those can create like a wick. So, you think you got your vegetation managed and everything like that, your house looks great, you got good clearances, but that fence will start burning, and then it burns up in underneath your eaves, and the fire gets into your attic, and it spreads through your house that would have normally been protected. So same thing that we were seeing as well was the like IV type materials and stuff like that for privacy screening were interwoven within like chain link fences and stuff like that, and that was acting much in the same fashion, right? It would catch those embers that the captain was talking about, and it would just create a wick right up in underneath the eaves of your house that's less protected than the sides of your structure, right? So that was important. The people leaving, right? We arrived and there was a lot of people that were in there, and when like filming, right? There's the roads are clear. We got in there. We had a huge concern with down power lines. We don't know, we'd see lights on in houses, so some of them are energized. We've got it hanging down. We can't rip the tops of our engines off or, decapitate ourselves with power lines driving through there. Plus we got these other vehicles that are driving and they're filming, and we ask you to leave, and I support your rights to stay at your home and try to protect it. We just ask you to leave just because there's unintended consequences with that. We're driving around and I'm trying to keep track of 5 different engines, right, with all these souls on board of each one of them. And there's fires burning, I'm plugging engines in over here, we're just trying to do what we can with what we got. There's a whole other factor brought in when we do see civilians that are in there, because each of us, like he mentioned, our first priority is life. So we may go to more extraordinary means to save that person that's in there than we would have if it was just your house or if it was just somebody's car or things like that. So we make decisions based on the information that's available, and we we have to make those decisions in a split second, much like these people that didn't make it to a safe zone. But that's why we ask you to leave, is that it helps us go home a lot of times, is because we aren't taking extraordinary measures because we know that house is occupied, and we gotta get that person out. And then they fight us because they don't wanna go out. And now it's too late, because we were accounting for the road that we came in, and there's not enough room to get out. So now we're stuck in here. Now we're trying to protect everybody. So that's why. And then, we don't know if you're looting. We don't know if you live there. If you do live there, try to know if your neighbors are there, so that we know that too, right? We want to make sure that we know where everybody's at. So that was one of the other lessons that I learned with that.
Briefly, who's doing the filming? Is it TV news crews or looky-loos or residents? Who's filming?
Yeah, just people. We're super busy. We're jumping around. We're getting a bunch of like detached garages that were catching fire for some reason. And just random civilians with phones and driving around in their cars. We did see a couple of news crews and stuff, but that was usually kind of after the fact. And typically the news crews will at least kind of check in with us and let us know that they're going to be in an area. And they're also concerned for safety too. They understand that, and they'll try to, pick what they're filming, but try to do it safely for the most part, most of the time. But these were just civilians that were just driving around. I don't know if they're residents because I didn't talk to a lot of them, but one gentleman that I saw filming next to a garage fire that we were fighting, I asked him if any of his neighbors were in, because I was knocking on windows and knocking fences away from houses, and we were trying to find out if there was anybody in there, because it's the middle of the morning, and if they are, they might be asleep. And he says, I don't know, I just called this in. So I don't know why he was in their driveway filming. But, it was just a lot of people that were in there, and that was one of the things I noticed. They did quickly get that contained with the law enforcement partners and the National Guard that came in, and they were able to secure our area. We ended up making contact with the people that had stayed in their residences, so we knew where they were at and kind of had a plan for them. But that initial, if you don't have to be in there, and just please leave. That just creates a whole other dynamic that we have to deal with. Even though you think you might be out of the way, it's causing somebody to possibly shift focus from something that they could have saved.
Thank you. James Drummond, Grass Valley City Fire Battalion Chief. You kind of had a lot on your plate. Tell us what you saw, what you did, and how your responsibility morphed over time, if you would, please.
Yeah. So I was assigned to the Eaton Fire as well, dispatched on the 8th, so the day after, or the second day of the incident. Went down. I was assigned as a division group supervisor. So initially, the fire's broken up into geographical areas, and each area has its own supervisor. Underneath me, I work for the operations section chief. We kind of come up with lines in the sand, a primary line of where we're going to try to stop the fire, contingency lines, and the further out if our primary lines don't make it. Some of that stuff is given to us by the operations section chief when we arrive. Some of it we have to go find ourselves. As we get there, you try to rapidly become familiar with the country that you're in. This area, there's a lot of houses, roads, subdivisions. So trying to figure out street names, where we could make a stand, where we couldn't make a stand, and then requesting the appropriate resources to handle the geographical area that I was assigned. We have, these guys were on an engine strike team, so we have engine strike teams, hand crew strike teams, dozer strike teams. But you come up with a plan, an allotment of resources that you think it's going to take to accomplish your plan. And this is all with coordinating with the division group supervisors next to you, so to each side. And you kind of all work together in a circle around the fire to make a plan of where you're going to try to stop it. Does it line up with where the next division's trying? We might have to alter our locations. This one was difficult with just road names. getting into areas, being not familiar with the city of Altadena. Numerous houses were still burning. Numerous houses were still actively catching on fire. That first morning, I mean, 10 minutes into my first shift, we were already breaking away to different houses inside the area that were on fire. And then the commercial structures, the commercial side of it. In my division, the local grocery store was on fire, the Bank of America, the Chase Bank, the bicycle shop, all these little shops. And that doesn't include, we're out in the community, all the schools. The area was devastated with schools lost, not only the house lost, but the infrastructure. And then, so after we get there, we get our kind of plan in place, we get the resources. These guys are working, we're running around trying to come up with a plan for the next day and the third day out, fourth day out. So the whole week is kind of planned on what we're gonna do, the successes we're gonna have, and if we're able to stop the fire, where we start mopping up, where we start allowing power companies, gas companies to come in, start securing their infrastructure. And then after 4 or 5 days, my area was fairly wrapped up, and I moved to a what they called storm group. So instead of having a geographical area, I have a lot wider of an area, pretty much the whole foothill portion behind Altadena and Sierra Madre. And our goal was to clean out storm water basins for LA County. So if they did have heavy rains, the storm water retention ponds were able to accept the water and the mud that came down the hill. And then we built a sandbag station, and then we were building sandbag distribution points for the community to come get sandbags so that they could protect what was left. Trying to keep runoff from the houses that had burned somewhat mitigated and controlled, and then trying to keep runoff going into the houses that were saved during the event. So that was how my job kind of morphed down there. I went from fighting fire to coordinating storm relief and dealing with flood waters and that stuff, which didn't come when I was there. Thank goodness the rains didn't, but we were prepared for it. We're trying to figure out the amount of mud that's going to come off a hill, and working with geologists and resource advisors. It was a different aspect that I was not familiar with prior to going down there in this.
The mud and water certainly came later. How about a number one takeaway for everyone listening?
Number one takeaway, and this is going to be for any of the fires that I've been on up here locally or throughout the state, is like it's been mentioned a few times, have that go bag, have a plan, make sure family or somebody knows your plan, they know where you're going, and just be prepared to leave. Like I said, the houses, items can be replaced, people can't. Have that plan, know the plan, and make sure that your family members know your plan and that you're tying in with them.
Good advice. All right. Thank you, Battalion Chief James Drummond. Sergeant Dennis Hack with the Nevada County Sheriff's Office. You were the law enforcement liaison with CAL FIRE Incident Management Team. You told me it was your job to communicate with every stakeholder, everyone who was affected by the fires, explaining those people, what's happening for those people, with the people fighting the fire, which the pros call the big fire machine. I mean, it's a huge endeavor. Traffic control, evacuations, repopulation, a lot to talk about. How did you manage all that in a very high stressful situation?
So just a little bit of background on the Sheriff's Office being involved in this process is that typically Nevada County Sheriff's Office wouldn't be seen involved in a firefighting effort in Southern California. So And in the incident management teams that CAL FIRE maintains, they have a position that's considered called a law enforcement liaison. And early in 2024, our sheriff asked that we begin participating in that program to assist throughout the state as we can, and then also to build our knowledge to increase our response for when we have a large incident up here in Nevada County. So I was asked to join one of those teams. When the Palisades fire started, I had been down there previously in December for the Franklin fire, and as a member of the liaison team, our job is to communicate, and by me being assigned to that team, I did not shoulder all of those responsibilities. I believe there were 20 of us in that portion of the incident management team that were maintaining that communication. And so our job is to do what you described and communicate with everybody who's involved, volunteer agencies, utilities, gas companies, roadways, and then all of the law enforcement agencies involved. So due to our familiarity with the same faces during the Franklin fire, I was invited to come down and help during the Palisades fire. During that time, we communicated with, as a law enforcement liaison specifically, we focused mostly on communicating with the different law enforcement agencies that are involved. So down there involved are, for example, state parks, Santa Monica Police Department, LAPD, LA County Sheriff's Office. I think ultimately there ended up being 7 or 8 different law enforcement agencies involved. So our job is to coordinate the efforts and communicate between the firefighting efforts. Initially, when the fire is moving, we're going to be focused on the need for evacuations, communicating with the operations section of CAL FIRE, getting an idea of where the fire is going to be going, and then working with the appropriate law enforcement agency to know that they are prepared to make those evacuations. Then as the fire moves through an area and the operations section of the fire deems that it would be safe, then we start working with repopulation through the utilities, the road companies, public health, and trying to get people back into their homes.
What lessons did you take away that you can share and you can learn from here at home?
So my biggest lesson down there is that we are up here in Nevada County well prepared. Some of the deficiencies that I saw, we are on top of up here. So things that are important is campaigns for knowing your zone, for zone-based evacuation systems and Genesis. We are lucky that we have trainings in our county that involve not only the sheriff's office, where the majority of the fires are experienced in the sheriff's office jurisdiction, but we also work with our local police departments, with Truckee and Grass Valley, to make sure that they are also familiar with Genesis when it comes to evacuations. We have moved into proactive law enforcement response to fires, making sure that as soon as a fire starts in our area that we are sending a representative from the sheriff's office to be hip to hip with the incident commander from CAL FIRE regarding the direction of travel of fire and the need for evacuations. We also have built out our search and rescue team and the Sheriff's Heart team to support evacuations in our area. Just like we would see in Nevada County, we saw down in Palisades, there are some barriers to evacuation. And 2 of those most significant barriers for folks are worried about their animals and worried about their personal property. So to mitigate those, to try and get the confidence of the public with the integration of the Sheriff's Heart team, we can come in and we can take care of people's animals. And then we have less people who remain in the evacuated area because of their concern for their animals, which makes it easier for the firefighters to conduct their firefighting efforts. Additionally, when it comes to personal property, it's been said a number of times that personal property can be replaced, and that folks that stay back, we encourage you not to do so. We encourage you to evacuate. We encourage you to evacuate early. That's for a number of reasons. Delayed notification for evacuations, we've seen throughout the state, can cause fatalities. Refusing to evacuate can also cause fatalities. When it comes to your personal property, for example, if one of our most recent large fires in the area was the river fire, and I know a lot of people say that they don't want to evacuate because they're concerned about their property. During the river fire, the sheriff's office took 1 report for theft from all those evacuations. You're going to have more of a law enforcement presence in an evacuated area than you would typically have in the majority of the county. We participate in a mutual aid system with neighboring law enforcement agencies throughout the state, and we flood evacuated areas with law enforcement 24/7 to make sure, to the best of our ability, that your personal property is protected. Another thing that we experience down there is an overflow of volunteers, which everybody appreciates. One of the things that we need to make sure that we do when we are using volunteers is that we maintain the integrity of our operations and any crime scenes that may exist in a fire. So if the cause of a fire is criminal and then there are fatalities as a result, then in general, that entire fire area could be considered a crime scene. So there was a large amount of people who want to volunteer in the Palisades fire and the Eaton fire. And managing those volunteers is difficult, right? We want to maintain the integrity of these possible crime scenes and also be able to take care of the people who are going into these areas. So what I would encourage members of the public to do to prepare for stuff like that is it takes some investment ahead of time. There are a number of volunteer agencies that you can invest time in to receive training and to be prepared and to pass background investigations to come and help in these big incidents. Locally, for example, I've already mentioned a couple of ours. The Sheriff's Heart, coming in and taking care of animals. Nevada County Search and Rescue, helping stand up our incident command structure for managing our evacuations and accepting law enforcement mutual aid that come to help. And then also, the Sheriff's Office has just a general volunteer program, affectionately known as the White Shirts. I know it takes some effort ahead of time, but that's how we're able to best use volunteers, is a little bit of investment on your part on the front end to make sure that we've passed that background. We get you sworn in as a disaster service worker in the state of California.
Thank you. That's good advice, Sergeant Dennis Hack. Next up, Assistant Chief of the CAL FIRE Nevada Yuba Placer Unit, Landon Hack, and there is a reason they have the same name. They are brothers, and we thank your family for your service. Assistant Chief Hack, when you arrived in Los Angeles, it was 2 a.m., you were busy evacuating people, trying to gain what you told me was situational awareness. Talk to me about those first few harrowed hours, if you would.
Yeah, so it took about 6-7 hours from the team activation call. Before I got down there, met with most of my ops section counterparts, my other team members down there. And what we typically do coming into a situation like that is we try and go get some of the situational awareness, because we are going to be assuming that incident typically the next morning or by noon the next day, somewhere in the next operational period, depending on what's decided by my boss. So we try and go out and get a feel for what's going on, kind of figure out where the fire's at, what kind of things are we going to be dealing with the next day. So in doing that, we actually we had kind of a picture coming in of what it was looking at, and I was in communications with one of the current ops section chiefs for Los Angeles County on the way down. So I had some knowledge already. So some of my ops guys, my branches, I
sent them to go sleep in the parking lot and get some rest because we knew they were going to be very busy the next morning. My other partner in the ops section, we went over across wasn't really the head of the fire anymore because it hit the Pacific Ocean. But where the fire had come down on the Pacific Coast Highway, and we had to make our way across to the original incident command post where we could have those conversations with the current incident organization folks. So we were making our way across there, several of us, and it was pretty crazy. There was power lines, power poles down, power lines all over the place. Obviously multiple structures involved, and it was mentioned earlier over on the Eaton fire, in the commercial buildings, right? There was hotels, there was banks, there was local grocery stores. So just about anything that you drive and normally see in a community was burning. Houses on the beach. So the hard part was there was still people evacuating. So we went over, we had a discussion, kind of got things figured out for the next day. And then coming back across, a couple of us ended up with some civilians in our pickup trucks who were still, I guess at that point, 12 hours later, 12 hours into it, decided that now was when they needed to evacuate. So, you know, as it was discussed earlier, that's our main concern, right? Is for folks getting out of their life. And so we got a couple of those folks in our vehicles, and you know, as we made it through, got them out to safety and kind of turned them over to law enforcement partners. As far as I had no idea at that point where even evacuation shelters were yet, and been briefed in at all. So, but that was just that initial probably 2 to 4 o'clock in the morning once I got down there.
What was your job, and what did you learn from that you think we can employ here?
So my job, once we get there, I oversee the entire ground incident operation. So all of the firefight, all the way from the beginning of the incident, you know, fighting the structure fires, the perimeter control, the aircraft, to the end of the incident, when in the repopulation, the infrastructure, and even what we call fire suppression repair, where we go in to where hand lines and dozer lines were put in place, and water bar, and kind of put that back together as best we can, as the bulldozers tend to do a little bit of damage to the ground. I think one of the biggest things I learned was the amount of structures that were actively burning when we were handed the incident. I'm going to guess, I have no true idea, but I'm guessing there was roughly 1,000 houses on fire. You know, it had moved through some were down to foundations already. The structures at that point were the fuel. The perimeter of the fire wasn't really growing at some exponential rate. The head of the fire had hit the ocean, and the two sides, what we call flanks of the fire, had 80-mile-an-hour winds on them. So it didn't make for real great fire progression. The real firefight at that point was structure to structure. The structures were the fuel. And it was really getting the resources in there and utilizing minimal water to try and keep it from getting from one structure to another. So there was a point where, you know, I had to tell them, you got to stop putting the structures out and try and just keep it off of the next one. So.
Maybe we could use a different microphone. That one seems to be giving up the ghost. Make sure they're on, button to the right. There you go. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chief Landon Hack. Jim Hudson, Deputy Chief of the CAL FIRE Nevada Yuba Cluster Unit. You were the Palisades Fire Incident Commander. And from a command standpoint, can you talk about, please, the complexities that you encountered as far as structure loss and destruction, evacuation, and repopulation? And as CAL FIRE is fond of saying, you basically wrote the book on repopulation. Talk to us a little bit about all those entities, if you would.
Yeah, I think I'll start with context on what we've heard: incident management team, we've heard operations, we've heard branch. So CAL FIRE has 6 incident management teams. I am one of 6 incident commanders. Landon is one of 6 operations chiefs. Whether it's a CAL FIRE unit such as this or a neighboring or local jurisdiction anywhere in the state, once they've exhausted their, I'll say, capacity to be able to mitigate an incident, then we're requested. It does not mean that those jurisdictions do not have the knowledge, skills, abilities, and trainings to do it. It comes down to the capacity issue. So on this incident too, CAL FIRE was requested by the County of Los Angeles, the City of Los Angeles, and when we arrived the first night, I think I got down there about 10, 11 o'clock at night from the drive here. The decision had been made, and as an incident commander, we work for what we call the agency administrators. That's the local chief, fire chief, that's the local police chief, that's the sheriff, or potentially even elected officials, depending on the type and scale of the emergency. So as we arrived, the decision had been made by the local CAL FIRE unit chief, the chief of the City of Los Angeles, the chief of Los Angeles County Fire Department, the sheriff, and LAPD to go into unified command. So we come in with the team, and we are a force multiplier. What CAL FIRE teams do is we bring process. We're very exercised. When we talk about complexity of this incident, I think, if we saw this fire in August and it was 23,300 acres, 700 acres, not a huge fire in the scope of California of what we've seen over the last decade. But doesn't really matter what the acreage is, it's how densely populated this area was. And this was I'll call it a historic wind event. I was just on a fire in Ventura 2 months before this one started, less than 2 months, the mountain fire in Camarillo, which burned a lot of homes with an incident management team. When we look at these events, they're not even calling them red flag or Santa Ana anymore. They're calling them PDS or potentially dangerous situations. So I think for context, as we talk about how do we prevent this, I won't go as far as saying an anomaly, but this was not your normal wind event. From a command standpoint, my job is to take the leader's intent from those agency administrators. I provide management objectives, and I validate operations control objectives. So for unified command on this, it's important in unified command with 5 agencies in unified command on this incident: the County Fire, City Fire, County Sheriff, and LAPD, and CAL FIRE. There's not 5 operations that we're undertaking. It is one message, it is one leader's intent, it is one set of objectives. So from a command standpoint, as I come in as the incident commander for CAL FIRE, is taking all those inputs, working with the incident commanders to make sure we have one plan, one set of objectives, regardless of jurisdiction or jurisdictional authority or responsibility. So that's what we do. So I don't want to underscore the complexity of the firefight on this incident. I've seen the night I rolled in and drove down PCH to the incident command post. I've been in plenty of situations where there was zero visibility due to smoke. I encountered, as I came in at 10, 11 o'clock at night, zero visibility due to orange out, basically, just the amount of flying embers that were going through the air. I probably would not take that route again if I knew what was going to happen that night, but the vehicle has still got 4 wheels on it. But I will say, it was a 24,000 acre fire, roughly guesstimates based on census and the folks that we were getting real-time information from for a pass access system. I think we're about 100,000 evacuated, just over 6,800 structures destroyed, and almost 1,000 damaged. Not all residential structures, but structures could have been a garage, and we're talking commercial, strip malls, rec centers. It's easy to say, it's 1,600 structures, but, domiciles, residents in that, 3, 4-story apartment complexes. So this was, that was the complexity. But so as far as challenges and the complexity of this one, Santa Ana events or wind events down like that are usually a day or 2. We were in a Santa Ana event our first 5 days there. So the fire burned to the ocean the first night. Operations did a great job on perimeter control. But, you know, and that's what operations does. But as from a command standpoint, I have to tell them, priority is always life, but then it's property, and then perimeter control is third, because we still had folks in the burn area. And when we talk about perimeter control, that could be large-scale structure protection, right? Protecting an entire community by perimeter. But for multiple days, we were getting structure ignitions with the interior, within the interior of the fire. Holdovers, and we're still getting ember cast from burned structures that are getting in the eaves. So the amount of resources that we had most of the state of California there. Northern California CAL FIRE resources were pre-positioned, local government resources from Northern California were pre-positioned through the Governor's Office of Emergency Services. But, you know, CAL FIRE, we've experienced incidents like this. We've done the Camp Fire. I had the opportunity to go to Lahaina. We did the Tubbs Fire. So we've seen this level of devastation. So in my mind as command, I know we're going to put out the fire. The fire always goes out. How do we reduce any more loss of life and property damage while accomplishing perimeter control? But as I'm driving to Southern California on the 7-hour drive, we know what's coming next, right? We know that this is going to be a very complex repopulation process. We know folks are going to be displaced from their homes for potentially long periods of time. People will not have homes to go back to. So that's the complexities that are going on for minute one as we're getting our in-brief from the local officials and the local agency administrators. Yeah, you know, like you said, you know, as far as repopulation, CAL FIRE, because of what we've seen in California, you know, some of the incidents I just named, very damaging fires, large-scale evacuations. It's been a necessity for us to be on the forefront of the repopulation process, and we have a great system in California. We have sheriff and CHP and PD officers on our CAL FIRE teams just for that reason. At the end of the day, I speak firefighter. I don't speak law enforcement that well. He does that. And I apologize in advance, I'm not a hack. Sorry to break the trend. So I forgot to start with that. But so we knew that this was going to be a very complex repopulation process. I was briefed on the way down there that this could be one of the largest lithium-ion electric vehicle incidents that we've seen in California history, other than Moss Landing, which the storage facility for those caught fire up in Monterey while we were there. So wow. I didn't know what the final numbers came out to. Complexities such as, you know, for minute one, we're thinking about everything's going to run into the ocean, right? There's going to be an EPA component here. There's going to be a debris removal component. And it's not our job as CAL FIRE to necessarily take on all those responsibilities, but we have to set the groundwork as the fire department and the incident management team for those, right? We need to identify and recognize the fact that there could be a large-scale hazmat emergency. There could be a public health emergency. So when we're talking about complexities, this was not just a 23,000 acre, or 23,000, just shy of 24,000 acres with scattered homes in the mountains or foothills. This was a heavily populated area, and there was going to cross multiple jurisdictions. All the ICs need to come together and say, hey, my jurisdiction is not the priority today, this is. And so that was what was challenging from a command standpoint. I thought we were very successful. I thought operations did a great job, our logistics, finance, plans, everybody, our information, PIOs, right? For context, on a normal incident, standard team deployment, we have a few PIOs on our team, and then we'll request 10 or 20 more. We had 100 PIOs. Not just because of the media market and where it was, or that it was an international news event. Our PIOs are there to relay information to the public. We call them liaison officers. He's our law enforcement liaison officer. We might have 5 to 10. We had 30, right? Because what their job too, outside the law enforcement aspect, is to bring everybody to the table that's got a stake in the game. Might not have jurisdictional authority, but infrastructure, utilities, roads, donation, people that want to donate, any companies or contractors that are going to be part of the recovery process. And so that's the complexity of what we were dealing with down there from a command standpoint. Obviously challenging, I think, from my perspective, great example of unified command. And all the agencies work great together. Tremendous support from our department, CAL FIRE, all the agencies involved. And I will say, you know, some of the stuff that's been touched on, it was briefed earlier, I believe it was Dennis that brought it up. Locally, within this area, Nevada County, Placer County, Yuba County, the area I'm in charge of operations for, it is some of the strongest unified command that I've seen in the state when we've had local incidents. The river fire crossed 2 counties, started in Placer, burned it in Nevada County. Not only on the fire side, but the law enforcement side, we train to work with neighboring allied agencies every single day, because an emergency of this scale doesn't care about an imaginary jurisdictional line or what our roles are. So that's how we've had success locally. We're all committed to that as public safety within this region, and that'll be a benefit moving forward should we see something like this in this community. So.
We are going to talk to a public information officer next, Tyler Tomlinson, but one last question for you. This was a very high-profile incident, politically charged. 67 local, state, and federal officials showed up there. It was probably one of the only fires that I know of anyway that drew 2 sitting presidents because it was the timing and how long it lasted. And you also had Governor Newsom there, and quite often these political leaders need instant informational gratification, and you might need to be focused somewhere else. How did you balance that? And what could we expect here locally?
Well, as from a command standpoint, that's my job, right? You know, an incident to this magnitude, got to understand that there's going to be assistance needed, whether it's CAL FIRE requesting assistance, the state requesting assistance. Like as you said, almost 70 elected officials by our count of what visited that incident, from local, state, and federal, including the governor, who I had the opportunity to provide a briefing to on multiple occasions throughout the incident, very engaged. For all the elected officials that were there, the conversation always ended, do you have what you need, what can I give you, right? So when we're talking about an incident of this scale, state proclamations, declarations, federal declarations, you know, we can request so much as CAL FIRE. You know, I should say though too, I mean, if you look at the complexity of this incident, we just had just about every state in the Western United States represented there, hundreds of engines. We had an incident management team that came to, was able to provide just around 10 people from British Columbia, firefighters, international firefighters from Mexico that worked with our USAR teams and handline construction, and as well as Israel. Israel was there and providing their firefighters and military, right? So as an incident commander, I don't have the ability to reach out to that. You know, working with the elected officials and the agreements that our department has made a priority across the state, we were able to gain access to those issues. Tremendous support, I'll say, you know, regardless of political affiliation, it was total bipartisan support on this incident. And at the end of the day, they were a great asset to us, every local, state, and federal official that came through, because I think, you know, what we can see, if there's not accurate information, or if we're not relaying timely information, misinformation starts, right? So as a CAL FIRE incident management team, we have the ability to stand up pretty robust press conferences on a daily basis, and to be able to brief the elected officials that were there, who just said, what do I need from you? I need you to tell your constituents this. We need you to tell your constituents this. What else do you need? I need help and assistance here. You know, with the governor, hey, he got us the National Guard, he activated everything he had as far as OES, assisted with neighboring agencies, working with the federal government on the proclamation. So I've never seen, you know, this is the most significant incident I've ever been an incident commander of, but it's also the most support I've ever seen from our elected officials ever. And felt totally supported. You know, and you mentioned VOADs, right? Nobody knows what Jim Hudson's phone number is. I'm just somebody that lives in Nevada County that goes out to incidents, right? But folks that have something to bring to the table, they reach out to the local official. They reach out to their state and federal congressmen, senators, and the governor's office. And when my phone rings, hey, this is just offered up. Do you want it? Absolutely. Thank you. Or do you... or I could direct them. You know, I don't need that, but I think they could be utilized here, because, you know, with the amount of volunteers that we were seeing, people wanted to provide assistance. We were able to wrangle that at the incident, but I'll just say the support was there. I felt totally supported, and so much assistance provided by the governor's office, all the way up to 2 presidents, you know, and the local county supervisors in Los Angeles, the city council, very engaged. But the assistance they provide us was unprecedented from my slide tray.
Thank you very much. Tyler Tomlinson, Grass Valley City firefighter, you were a public information officer. We've talked a lot about that. You did that for 2 weeks down on the Palisades fire. Public media relations, your primary assignments. I'm interested to know how often and to what extent were you briefed, and were you given any talking points, and were you ever told to spin the story in a certain way?
Yeah, we met as like the chief mentioned, there's 100 of us, and we met, there's multiple meetings every morning, first thing in the morning about what the story is today. And it's not a made-up story, but it's what are the talking points for today, like you mentioned. And it's really coming from what does the community need? What are the questions the community's asking? And what can this is how we can provide and answer those questions to this point. And so there's multiple meetings about, here are all the talking points, here's all the resources that we have to assist, all the needs that are coming in from the public and from the media, and then also kind of where's everybody going, where's everybody meeting that day, because there's multiple branches of the public information team. There's a community branch that's out in the community, whether that's at stores or gas stations or anything like that that are outside the evacuation zone where the community and the public are still frequenting. And just be able to just stand there. There's maps, there's just tons of information that we have that we can provide the public. And one of the cool things that I was able to do that first day I was there was help set up a disaster recovery center. And so that was kind of a one-stop shop for all residents to just show up, and it was FEMA assistance, Red Cross assistance, DMV, Social Security, anything that you may need, anything that you may have lost, there was assistance there. And then also the media branch. But to get to your point, no, I was never told to spin the story. We had our talking points, of course, just like Chief Hudson mentioned, it was really complex. That's the best word that I could explain it, the whole incident. And there's a lot of sticky questions and topics, not just fire-wise, but also politically, that, I was, took some heat on. And whether that's, response times from the original fire department, whether was there enough water, what happened to all the water, what happened to a certain reservoir, who knew about different aspects, and could have this been prevented, and how did the fire start, and a lot of different viewpoints on all of that. And so yes, a lot of politically, maybe intense questions that I got, but also a lot of the international firefighters, like the chief mentioned, and also out of state. And so it drew a lot of media attention from across the board, whether politically people just want to know, internationally, interstate. So it was tough. It was fun. It was a great team to work with. But no, we were never told to spin the story, or so we're just there to be that liaison. What does the community need from the fire personnel, the incident management team, and then also take that to the incident management team, and then take the information back to the public, and just be that support and be that face out there in the community.
All right, that's going to have to do it. Unfortunately, we are over time. I want to thank all the gentlemen for their time. Thank you for your service. And next month on the forum, we'll have the County Executive Office, Allison Lehman, +1. Terry McAteer will be back here in the hot seat. And I want to thank you all for coming in. I hope we answered some of your questions. Have a great day.